The manager ripped her card in two, slammed it on the counter, and barked for 911. "Arrest this fraud!" he shouted, his voice shaking the marble walls. Laughter flickered through the lobby as customers filmed, eager for a spectacle. A black woman stood alone, branded a criminal in a place her money built. Security circled, ready to drag her out like trash, but she didn't plead. She didn't run. With a single call, she was about to turn the entire bank upside down and bury his career in front of everyone. The lobby of Dominion Bank was designed to intimidate. High-vaulted ceilings, gleaming marble floors, and a chandelier that dripped crystal light over mahogany counters. It was a place built to remind people of power. And on that afternoon, it became the stage for a humiliation the entire city would soon hear about. Elena Brooks walked in with calm steps, her leather folio tucked neatly under her arm. She wasn't here for spectacle, only to finalize a transaction. But the way the staff eyed her from the moment she entered said enough. Whispers flitted behind the polished counters. A teller tilted her chin to a colleague and smirked. Elena approached the main desk, voice composed. "I'm here to access my corporate account." Elena Brooks. The teller's smile was tight, brittle. "One moment." She disappeared into the manager's office, returning seconds later with a man whose very stride radiated arrogance. Richard Hale, the branch manager, adjusted his tailored suit jacket as though preparing for battle. His eyes swept Elena up and down, landing on her skin, then on her folio, then back on her face. "You must be lost," Richard said, voice laced with mockery. "This isn't the public assistance line." Eleanor's expression didn't shift. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Laughter crackled from behind the counters. Even a few clients seated in leather chairs near the windows chuckled. Richard leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough for the room to hush around them. "Let me save you some embarrassment. You don't belong here. We don't entertain imposters." Eleanor's voice remained steady. "Imposter? You heard me." He waved a hand at her folio. "Show me what's inside. Identification, documentation, something. Otherwise, you're leaving." She placed her documents on the counter. He barely glanced at them before ripping her card in half, the sound sharp enough to slice through the silence. He let the pieces flutter onto the marble like confetti. Gasps rippled. Phones rose. Guests began recording. "You think you can waltz into my bank with fake credentials?" Richard roared. "Security!" Two guards stiffened at the corners of the room. Elena didn't move. She bent, picked up the torn halves of her card, and slipped them back into her folio. Her voice carried without needing volume. "That card was real." Richard smirked, drunk on his authority. "Oh, I'm sure it was. Just like the scams we see every week. You don't look like someone with this kind of account, and you know it." The words landed like daggers. "You don't look like someone." Guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering in agreement, others staring at their phones, pretending neutrality. Elena didn't flinch. She met his stare head on. "Call who you need to, but understand this. You're not just making a mistake. You're making history," Richard laughed harshly. "History? Sweetheart, the only history you're making is a police record." 911! He slammed the receiver on his desk, barking into it. "Yes, I need officers dispatched immediately. Fraud suspect in the main lobby. Black female, mid-30s, attempting to access restricted accounts." "Send them now!" The words echoed, poisonous and deliberate. A few guests clapped mockingly. Others leaned in, hungry for scandal. One man whispered, "About time someone stopped these fraudsters." Another muttered, "This'll go viral." Eleanor's hands stayed at her sides, calm, unshaking. Inside, the fury simmered, but she let it smolder instead of blaze. Richard paced in front of her, putting on a show. "Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the disruption. This woman attempted to infiltrate our systems. But don't worry, we're handling it." Phones zoomed closer, recording his every sneer. "Security!" Richard barked. "Stand ready until the police arrive. If she moves an inch, put her in cuffs." One of the guards hesitated. "Sir, she hasn't actually—" "Do as I say," Richard snapped, eyes blazing. The guard's jaw tightened, but he stepped closer, his presence looming over Elena. Richard turned back, voice dripping venom. Do you know what happens to liars in this bank? They're erased. You're about to learn that the hard way. Elena finally spoke, calm, slicing through his chaos. And you're about to learn that arrogance blinds faster than ignorance. The crowd murmured, phones recording tighter shots. A teenager whispered, "Who is she? She doesn't look scared." Richard slammed his palm on the counter. "Enough! You're done here. When those officers arrive, you'll be leaving in handcuffs. And I'll personally make sure your name is blacklisted in every bank in the city." Elena tilted her head slightly, studying him as if he were already finished. "You sound very certain of your power." "Because I am certain," Richard snapped. "This is my branch, my rules, my authority." The teller behind him smirked. "You tell her, Mr. Hale." But then a beep from Richard's computer interrupted the smug air. A flashing message appeared on his screen. "Unverified incident reported. Escalation protocol pending." He blinked, confused, clicking furiously. The system refused his credentials. His smile wavered, but he masked it quickly. "Glitch," he muttered. "Just a glitch." Elena said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any outburst. The lobby buzzed with tension. Guests were no longer just entertained. They were intrigued. Who was this woman who stood so steady against humiliation? Richard raised his voice again, desperate to reassert dominance. "Police are on their way, and when they arrive, you'll regret stepping foot in here." Eleanor's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "No, Mr. Hale. The regret belongs to you." Her words struck the crowd like a hidden drumbeat, ominous, promising, undeniable. The guards shifted uneasily. One whispered to the other, "Something's not right." Richard turned to his staff, shouting louder, almost manic now. "Everyone here is a witness. She tried to defraud this bank." "You saw it!" But the staff no longer looked confident. The whispers had shifted. Some of the guests who had laughed earlier now frowned, sensing the pendulum swinging. The chandeliers gleamed overhead, but all eyes were on the woman in the center of the storm. Silent, composed, a fortress against his storm of insults. Elena Brooks had not raised her voice. She had not lifted a hand. But with every insult hurled, every threat barked, and every laugh recorded, she was building the noose he didn't know was already around his own neck, and she was about to pull the rope tight. The tension in the lobby was electric. Richard Hale stood behind the counter, breathing hard, reveling in his imagined triumph. His words, fraud, arrest, handcuffs, still rang in the ears of the crowd, but the faint smile on Elena Brooks's face unsettled him more than he dared admit. The guards waited, uneasy. The guests whispered, and phones recorded. The spectacle was no longer just entertainment. It was history in the making. Elena finally broke the silence, her voice calm yet commanding. "Mr. Hale, you've mistaken humiliation for victory, but in truth, you've just staged your own downfall." Richard barked out a laugh, too sharp, too forced. "Is that right? You think a little bravado is going to save you when the police arrive? Please." Her hand moved slowly to her folio. The crowd leaned in, phones rising higher. She tapped a single button on the slim device inside. A faint chime sounded, and the lights above the counter flickered. Richard froze. His computer screen blinked, then turned black. The teller's terminal beside him followed, and then the entire row of systems dimmed, one by one. A warning filled the screens in bold red. "Emergency protocol activated. Access restricted." Gasps erupted across the lobby. Richard slammed the keyboard. What is this? Somebody fix this now." The teller shook her head, panic flaring in her eyes. "It's not us, it's coming from headquarters." Eleanor's gaze never wavered. "Headquarters is watching, Mr. Hale. Every word you spoke, every insult, every order to drag me out like a criminal. And now, they've decided to intervene." Richard's face paled, sweat sliding down his temple. "That's impossible. You don't have the authority." Eleanor stepped closer, her presence filling the space he thought he owned. "Authority? Mr. Hale, you're looking at the majority shareholder of Dominion Bank. This building, these accounts, this branch, all of it falls under my oversight. And today, You showed the world why leadership must change. The crowd erupted. Guests gasped, some whispering, "Shareholder? She owns the bank?" Phones shook as people zoomed in, capturing every second of the revelation. Richard's mouth opened, but no sound came. His arrogance had evaporated, leaving only panic. You're lying." Elena raised her folio again. A new notification appeared. Branch Manager Richard Hale. Employment terminated. Effective immediately. Gasps tore through the lobby. A few customers actually clapped. The guards exchanged glances, stepping back from Elena, their loyalty crumbling. "No." Richard staggered, his voice breaking. "No, that can't be real." He jabbed at his badge, but when he swiped it against the reader, it flashed red. Access denied. Again and again, his knees buckled. "Please, this is a mistake." Elena's voice cut through the chaos, steady as stone. "The only mistake was believing you could use prejudice as power. You ripped my card. You called me a fraud. You summoned police to arrest me for daring to walk into my own bank." Ruth Caldwell, the elderly woman who had watched in horror, raised her voice from the back. "She told you. She warned you. And you still slapped her dignity across the floor." The crowd turned hostile, no longer laughing but condemning. "Fire him!" someone shouted. "He should be arrested!" another cried. Richard's face was ashen. He looked at the guards desperately. "Stop her! Don't just stand there." But Officer Daniels, the taller of the two, shook his head. "You're not our boss anymore." The other added, "She is." Eleanor let the silence drag, her eyes sweeping the room, locking with staff and guests alike. For too long, arrogance has sat behind these desks, deciding who belongs and who doesn't. That ends today. Her folio chimed again. Another notification lit the screen. She read it aloud. "Effective immediately, Richard Hale is barred from all Dominion Bank properties. His accounts are frozen pending investigation. Compliance has been notified." Richard gasped like a drowning man. "No, please, you can't do this. My family, my reputation." "You destroyed that yourself," Elena said coldly. "The moment you believed my silence was weakness. Silence is strategy, Mr. Hale. And today it became your undoing." Tears pricked his eyes. He collapsed against the counter, muttering apologies. But the crowd wasn't swayed. Their phones captured every pathetic plea, every tremor in his voice. His downfall was already viral. Elena turned toward the staff clustered at the back. "And as for the rest of you, this is your warning. The next time a client walks through those doors, you will not judge them by their skin, their clothes, or your assumptions. You will judge them by respect. Fail, and you will follow Mr. Hale out that door." The teller who had smirked earlier dropped her gaze, shame burning across her face. Elena straightened her shoulders, her voice now rising like thunder. "This bank will not be remembered for chandeliers or marble floors. It will be remembered for how it treats people. And as long as my name is on it, respect is not negotiable." The lobby broke into applause. It wasn't polite clapping. It was raw, visceral, relief-filled. Guests who had once laughed now cheered. Even the guards joined, nodding firmly. Richard's cries were drowned out, swallowed by the sound of his own irrelevance. Elena gathered her folio, her every movement dignified. She walked toward the entrance, the crowd parting around her like she carried a crown. At the door, she paused, turning back one last time. Her eyes locked on Richard, now crumpled behind the counter. Her words cut sharp and final. "You called 911 to arrest me, but today, the only call that mattered was mine. Remember that." She pushed open the doors. Outside, the sun blazed and news cameras already waited. Reporters shouted questions, flashes exploded, and the world leaned in to hear the story. Elena raised her chin, her voice clear for every microphone. "This isn't just my victory, it's a warning. Never mistake prejudice for power, because when the truth arrives, it will strip you bare." And with that, she walked into the light, leaving behind marble floors, shattered arrogance, and a fallen man who finally understood what real power looked like. Respect is not negotiable. Power without it collapses. If this story struck you, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe now. Don't just watch justice, be the first to witness it. Turn on your notifications so you never miss the next story of truth and power.